Woo!
Welcome to Night Talks, the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communications talk show, produced by students for you. I'm Kayla Perkins, a senior studying media production management technology. Our guest today is Joan Ryan, a University of Florida CJC graduate who worked for the Orlando Sentinel, San Francisco Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle. Now she's a senior media advisor to the San Francisco Giants. Hi, Joan.
Hi, Kayla.
Thank you for joining us today. What initially inspired your interest in sports journalism?
Well, I think what inspired me was the fact that clearly I didn't belong in sports. And, I tell the story of going into a locker room a million years ago, at least a million years ago. And I had only been in a locker room twice at this point. And I went down to the locker room. I had to just interview this one guy. I was a Cub reporter at the time. So, it was going to be a sidebar for when I wrote my story. And so I pushed open the door, and I happened to be the first reporter down. You take the elevator all the way down from the press box and push open that door. And I walk right into this stream of half-naked guys. At one point, it goes silent. The whole locker room goes silent because they had seen me. And it was like they had never seen a woman before. It was so weird. And then they just erupted into catcalls and, just vulgarity. And I'm standing there, and I was very introverted at the time. And while I'm standing there, I'm feeling something start to go up my leg. And I had a skirt on, nice Catholic girl skirt. And I look down, and there's a big old football player sitting on a bench in front of the lockers, which were alongside. All the lockers were down there, and he was sitting there hunched over with a long-handled razor that they use to cut off all of the tape that they put on their wrists and their ankles. And so that's what he was sliding the handle to this razor up toward the hem of my skirt. And so even though I was very introverted, oh my God, I just exploded. I just wheeled around to the sky. Yeah, it was crazy. And so I started for the door because obviously I wasn't making any headway here. And in the doorway was a middle-aged man who had a red V-neck sweater. And I knew, from looking down on the field during the game that the red V-neck sweaters were for the coaches and, executives and that sort of thing. So I head toward the doorway, and this guy's standing in the doorway and just having the time of his life. He thought this was the most entertaining thing he had ever seen. And I left and did get Joe Cribbs. I got the PR guy to bring out Joe Cribbs. And I went up to the press box, and I'm sure I wrote a terrible story, and because I was like, ah. And then I had never aspired to be a sports writer ever. I was on the editing track. I wasn't going to be a sports writer. And then when I was finished with my story up in the press box, I was thinking like, oh my God, these guys really, really don't want me around here. And that's when I decided I really, really wanted to be a sports writer. So I joke that I built my whole career on bitterness and resentment, but it really worked for me.
I love that, proving them wrong.
Proving them wrong, exactly.
Was the transition into a busy newsroom difficult, or were you prepared for the pace? Were there any challenges as you were the first establishing yourself as a young reporter in the field?
So many challenges. I was very introverted, so it was really hard for me to, go into those locker rooms and, and even interviewing people. Oftentimes, it's like Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I covered them a little bit. And it was, I just hid in the herd of other reporters. And I would just listen to their questions and the answers. And I would just go off of that. Like, I would never raise my hand or really, it took me a while to get acclimated to that. And also just my own confidence, was challenging. I had to, almost pretend I was someone else because I knew I couldn't navigate this world, this, very male-oriented world, and, with not really knowing the sports that well. And so I had to just kind of pretend I was somebody else.
Yeah, fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. And it really, really helped me.
In 1985, you moved across the country to work as a columnist for the San Francisco Examiner. How did you get that opportunity?
Well, going back to my editor at the Orlando Sentinel, Dave Bergen, he also loved San Francisco. He had been a sports editor in San Francisco before he went to the Orlando Sentinel. And so he hired 4 of us away from the Orlando Sentinel because he got the job as the editor of the San Francisco Examiner. So it was really like such a turning point in my life to go to San Francisco. And I had been in San Francisco just months earlier for the Super Bowl in Palo Alto down at Stanford. And I wasn't covering the game. It was that Dave Bergen wanted to go because he loved the Bay Area. And so I went along, but I was sitting in the I was sitting in the stands. So that's what got me there, and I loved it. When I went there, I was like, oh my God, if someday I could live here, I'd be so happy. And sure enough, like 3 months later, Dave Bergen gets the job as the editor of the San Francisco Examiner, and I ended up there, and I never looked back. I just really, really, there's something about San Francisco that just called to me.
In 1994, you then worked for the San Francisco Chronicle as a columnist and reporter. How was this publication and your role different from the Examiner?
Yeah, going from the Examiner to the Chronicle was much more high profile, and they paid more.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, a newspaper is a newspaper. And there wasn't a huge difference between the Examiner and the Chronicle. What I loved about the Examiner was they were sort of the little brother of the Chronicle. And so they were really gutsy and scrappy. And there was a camaraderie among everyone at the Examiner. We really relied on each other. And the Chronicle, was a bit more staid, a little bit. But once I got over there, I really, really liked it because in some ways it was more of a challenge. The expectations were a little higher for that. And so, newspaper people are the best people. They really are. And so you're always going to have interesting people to work with, whether I was at the Examiner or the Chronicle. And everybody is just very cynical, super, super cynical, and almost everybody's really funny and, so committed, really, really committed to our work. And so for me, like every day was a new day and you could do all kinds of stuff. Like I was writing a column in news at this point. And so afternoon is coming, I still don't have my column. I was going to write a column about OxyContin, because there was this radio guy, Rush Limbaugh, who got addicted to OxyContin. And so I thought, okay, that's a really good story. So I was calling around to different drug rehab places and, how prevalent is this? And, trying to get it. Nobody was calling me back. And now it's like an hour later and then another hour. And it's like, I got to get my column. Something's going to fill that, open space in the newspaper. And so I just got my purse, walked out the door, and went right into what in the Bay Area is called the Tenderloin, which was, the really, really drug
Hotspot.
Yeah, hotspot. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna find out, well, how do you get OxyContin? Can't be like you just walk down the street and you get OxyContin. So I just head out and just trusted my instinct. When you need to do a story and you just don't have it yet, get out of the frickin' office. Just go out there. Something is going to emerge, and it has never failed me. Something will emerge. So I go out, I'm wandering around a bit, and I go up to somebody and I said, where do you think I would get OxyContin here? And it was a guy who was a little bedraggled. He says, oh yeah, you want to go up, to St. Anthony's and take a right, and, that's where you're going to find the OxyContin. Okay. So I go there and I said, hey, where would I get OxyContin? He said, oh, you're going to get it up there. This is weed. It was like you're in an elevator, wrong
department.
Wrong department, it's like, so I go up, okay, I'll go up to the OxyContin. And at this point, I'm dressed like a suburban mom because I wasn't expecting to go into the Tenderloin. So I go up there and I ask somebody, where would I get some OxyContin? Well, all of a sudden there's like 5 guys around me. It's like, oh, what are you looking for? What do you need? And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm looking for. And he's like, yeah, so what do you want? What do you, what? And I'm like, I have no idea what I want. And I said, well, it's for my brother. And, how much of an addict is he? Well, he's a pretty good addict. And I now have to buy something, from them, which I do. And we're standing on the curb there. One guy's on a bicycle, trying to push his wares, And I said, well, I'll take 5. And I don't know, like, how many milligrams they are. It's just like,
I'll
just take 5. And I said, and they're starting to, get their stuff out. And I said, we're standing right on the curb. Can we get closer to the building? Like, I'm thinking the cops are gonna just, and they're like, oh no, it's fine. We can do it here. So I got my 5 pills, and went back to the office and wrote this whole column on it, and how there was no police, there was nothing. It was just an open fair of drugs. And then the next day, I get a call from the police chief who says, that was against the law what you did, and you could have been really hurt. I said, you know what? They were really nice. They were really nice to me. I felt very safe. Anyway, then the next day, he took me on a walk through the Tenderloin to show me, how much they were trying to deal with this problem. And, it was such a lesson in just trusting that there's a story out there and that you're going to find it. And being on deadline really helps.
What were some of the most exciting or impactful stories you were able to tell?
Well, there's a few that come right to mind. And one is my book, Little Girls in Pretty Boxes, about young female gymnasts and figure skaters and the abuse that they endured. And this was back in 1995. And then the second one is about Arthur Ashe, who was, just an iconic black tennis player. And he won Wimbledon. And then the third one is Billie Jean King, another iconic tennis person who, had her own issues. But Little Girls in Pretty Boxes was really impactful in that it was an expose. And, I did so much research. And again, no cell phones, very limited internet. And so I had to track down, I was calling, because I didn't really have the money to travel around the whole country, but I did go to some places. Anyway, the book comes out, and it is like I was on Oprah, and I was on with Katie Couric, and all kinds of places and magazines and everything, because it really was such an expose. Because basically, the gymnasts were looked at as little girls, right? And they were just cute, and had sparkles in their hair and all of that. But what I exposed was, it was brutal. what those girls went through. Absolutely brutal. And, I covered every sport, and gymnastics at that time was the worst sport of all of them. Like the NFL looked like, a children's playground compared to what was going on with the abusive, with these poor girls, starving. And, several of them would train on broken bones and continue to train because if they didn't, they would have lost their window to be at an Olympics, right? Because you had to get to the Olympics, before your puberty. And that, I've written 5 books, and that will always stand as the most impactful piece of writing. And then with Billie Jean King, it was, I was interviewing her, and she was my idol. I loved Billie Jean King for so many different reasons. She was just such a trailblazer and just had such grit. And she's the one who really created women's tennis. Yeah. And so one day I'm interviewing her, and I'm still kind of a cub reporter, and I've got my tape recorder on the table, and I'm really excited to talk with her. But at one point I asked her, because she had been outed as gay, and at that time it was scandalous. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. It was all over the news. She had to do a press conference, and it was private for her to be outed as gay. I mean, it was, and so she lost every sponsorship she had after that. And so I asked her, so how do you think that will affect your legacy? Will it damage your legacy? And she said, turn the recorder off. And so I turned the recorder off. And she said, I've done 1 million interviews with all the best in the world. And the good ones, meaning the good reporters, they don't have to go there. They don't have to sink, to sensationalism. She said, okay, turn it back on. And I was so embarrassed because it really was not appropriate after all those years to bring up the worst thing that had happened in her life and ask her, how was that going to do her legacy? So I learned from that. I just said, okay, I am never going to forget what she told me. And that really gave me, a foundation for my North Star was integrity.
It was kind of a painful lesson to learn, but...
It was a painful lesson to learn. And we've, become, great friends because she's such a wonderful person. And she got it that I was a young reporter and, stumbling around and thinking like, oh, okay, I'm gonna, break this story open or something, and realize, no, that's not the way to go about your life.
How do you approach the writing process? What do you focus on, such as your goals for the piece, themes, or audiences?
Every piece you write, your approach is it's going to be the best piece you've ever written. So you keep pushing yourself. Okay, I wrote this really great column. I'm going to write a better one. And then I'm going to write a better one and a better one. So that really was my approach. And it was my goal to actually do that. And it was fun because you're always challenging yourself. It's like, okay, how can I write this? And I would also have a state of mind of, I love novels. So when I write about a particular person, I'm thinking them novelistically. How do I bring this character to life? What are the details I'm going to put in this story that is going to make you feel like, oh, I know that person.
As a pioneering female sports columnist, how far has the industry come in terms of gender representation? And did you face any of the difficulty yourself?
It is so much better now. Like when I was there, I was often the only woman in the press box, often the only woman in the locker room. And nowadays, it's not quite 50-50, but I mean, you look at basketball and the NFL and all of that, like women are doing all kinds of work, and they're amazing at it. They're doing play-by-play, in the booths, and so it is a different landscape today, and it makes me very, very happy.
You authored several other books, including your latest, Intangibles: Unlocking the Science and Soul of Team Chemistry. What are some of the topics you explored?
Well, for me, the most interesting topic was the neuroscience of it. Like, what's going on in our brains that contributes to team chemistry. So, for instance, one of the things I found really interesting was we have what's called mirror neurons in our brain. Here's an example from the Giants. A young kid named Matt Duffy, was in the minor leagues, and suddenly he leaped to the major leagues because they needed somebody like him. So he walks into the clubhouse, the major league clubhouse for the first time. And it's like walking to, Mecca or something. Like it's really different from the minor leagues. And he walks in and he's still got this, he's got acne, just a little bit of acne, and he's like so skinny and gawky, and he walks in and he's looking for his name on the locker, and in the corner there's one of our, Hunter Pence at the time, was like one of our big stars. And I was in the locker room at the same time. And so I'm seeing Hunter Pence look at Matt Duffy. Just watch Matt Duffy, looking for his locker and getting his bag and start emptying stuff. And then I see Hunter Pence start to walk toward him. And Hunter Pence comes over to him and puts his arm around his shoulder, and he said, "Matt, you're exactly the guy we need right now." Well, now Matt Duffy is standing a little taller. He's like, "God, Hunter Pence is telling me that, that they really need me." And so, he goes about his business, and he's starting that day, plays really well, and stays playing really, really well. And he becomes kind of a little bit of a star. And I thought, you know what? Just some words, just some true trust. I mean, Hunter Pence gave all of his trust. Like, I totally trust you that you're going to go out there and do well. And just knowing that you are trusted is a game changer. And the mirror neurons, to go back to that, is, so let's say, another player is across the clubhouse, and you've got Matt Duffy and Hunter Pence together, and Matt Duffy, Hunter Pence has his arm around Matt Duffy. That guy over there watching it, his brain releases oxytocin as if it's happening to him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So that sense of touch, even though he hasn't touched the guy across, he's feeling it. And so there's this team chemistry in that if you have a trusting culture in there and you're seeing these interactions every single day, that is team chemistry. And in doing my research, I came to understand that team chemistry is only about elevating performance. If the performance doesn't go up, all you have is camaraderie. And that's very different from team chemistry. Camaraderie is just, we go to dinner together, we really like each other. Yeah, but are you better for having interacted with each other?
Your columns and features have won tons of awards. You were inducted into UF CJC's Hall of Fame in 2000. In 2024, you were inducted into the sports at CJC's Ring of Honor. What do these accolades mean to you? Did you see yourself becoming celebrated by your alma mater when you were a student in this building?
Never. It never crossed my mind. Like, that wasn't me. And as I said, I majored in editing and in the journalism school, and I just never imagined that I would have been up on that stage and accepting this incredible honor. And it was interesting too to sort of, listen to my introduction, and I leaned over to George Solomon, another inductee, and I just said, "Who is that they're talking about? That ain't me." But I really listened to it. And my two sisters were in the audience, and they were just so happy for me, and they were so, like, they didn't, because they live I don't live near them. They live in South Florida and I live in San Francisco. And they said, we didn't know all that. We didn't know you did all that. That's really awesome. And so that might have been the highlight, was just having my sisters be there with me and enjoy that with me. So yeah, it was really incredible, frankly, to just look at myself like, gosh, that's a really cool thing, and to embrace it and feel really, really good about it. And I did. And I'm so grateful. I still don't know how it was so unexpected, so how they even chose me among all these people that certainly earned it as well. So there's still a lot going through my head about that, but it's really a highlight for me.
That's great. It sounds like you deserve it. Impressive woman.
Well,
getting your
you.
justice. Yeah.
Thank you.
As you were named a woman who could be president by the San Francisco League of Women Voters, what advice would you give young women wanting to make a name for themselves?
I think that you have to have the goods. You have to have the curiosity. You have to have the integrity. But mostly, and we touched on this earlier, it's all about trust. It's totally about trust. And you have to trust others, and you have to be trustworthy. And, and there's only one way to build trust, and that's one interaction at a time. So it's really important, all those interactions you have, to really hold in your mind, and it will just become second nature. That if somebody isn't trusting you, you initiate the trust. That you're like, okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to put it out there, because again, how our brains are wired, they're going to receive some of that. And with every interaction, they're going to receive a little bit more of that. And it's really a wonderful approach to life on every level.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your insights, Joan. I feel like I've learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you to our viewers for joining us tonight. Until next time, have a good night.